A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The angel Gabriel was sent from God to a town of Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man named Joseph of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. And coming to her, he said, "Hail, full of grace, the Lord is with you." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. My mother prayed the Rosary daily, often in bed in the morning while we children got dressed for school, sitting with her arms resting on the white chenille spread, the beads in her hand moving softly, steadily between her fingers, as she stared at the icon of our Mother Perpetual Help, or occasionally lowered her head. When she came down into the kitchen where we'd be eating our breakfast, you could see those little inverted bumps on her forearms from the chenille bedspread. She also still bore the impression of whatever mystery she had been praying that morning, and would begin making our lunches with an aspect more joyous or sorrowful or glorious, at least for a while, until one of us spilled something or someone started arguing or the telephone rang, and then she was out of the mystery and back into reality, back to earth, back to motherhood 24/7. My first rosary was all of blue plastic on waxy string. We had been given rosaries in the second grade CCD class, and once we memorized the prayers, our homework was to say a complete rosary on our own. But you have to realize, 7-year-olds aren't really wired for saying the same prayer 50 times. And while I approached the first decade with admirable fervor, by the second I was getting squirmy. What saved me were the beads. I loved the beads. The blue was a sharp turquoise, like swimming pools, or the bathrobe my mother wore in the mornings. The turquoise beads became my bridge. Now, I don't recall what mysteries I was supposed to be meditating on, because they had been superseded by my own, the mysteries of swimming pools and picnics. By the time I was 10, I was moving or saying the rosary on Saturdays with my family, though I don't know that I liked the rosary so much as the rhythm of my family praying together. I imagined the rosary as a drum and my family praying as the drum beat. However, during my adolescent years in the seminary, the rosary became a permanent fixture in my life. I could easily forget to carry a pen in my pocket for class, or leave my wallet in my desk, or my keys in my locker, but my pocket always had a rosary. And like my mother, I was faithfully praying before our Mother Perpetual Help, fingering the beads as I quietly moved to the rhythm of my voice, going from mystery to mystery. In her final years, when I visited my mother in the assisted living home residence, we would always say a rosary. She was essentially nonverbal because of Alzheimer's, though this in no way precluded her from saying a rosary. I thought about others like her in this special Alzheimer's unit who couldn't remember who you were from one minute to the next, but surprisingly would know all the words to the song "Bicycle Built for Two" when the music therapist came in. Old classics, Christmas carols, childhood songs, the music seemed to be stored somewhere else, somewhere beyond memory. Music Poetry, prayer. Whenever I took out my rosary and began by announcing the sign of the cross, my mother, who seemed asleep, would lift her head, strain to move through the fog, and suddenly she'd be praying along with me. She'd often get a little lost in the creed, but by the Our Father, she seemed to be at ease. And with the first Hail Mary, she was home free. The Hail Mary had nothing to do with memory. It was in her blood, her breath, the fulfillment of a wonderful promise. Because I believe that this prayer, this very simple prayer, if pursued long enough, if cherished long enough, it can actually become part of our biology, a marvelous incarnation. I'm committed to saying the rosary every day, sometimes several rosaries, a commitment I've truly come to cherish. And I especially enjoy saying the rosary when I'm in the car traveling a long distance or when I'm taking the subway. Now, at first I found the scene in the subway car itself too distracting, and I would look out the window at the places and the stations sweeping by. But as I grew more focused, I paid greater attention to the people around me as I prayed, and found that in fact the sorrowful mysteries and the orange line are in perfect sync. I begin the agony of the garden at Roxbury Crossing, scourging at the pillar at Tufts Medical, because there is agony and scourging and carrying of the cross in every car. And as I speed through the city, I sometimes think of my mother in those early years, telling her beads as she moves softly with the rhythm of the prayer. Her eyes remote yet focused, looking at the icon, lifting to an occasional sound of a child's voice, looking and not really looking at all, there and not there. Because in the depth of her prayer, at the heart of it, my mother wasn't just beyond herself. She was beyond everything, beyond the rosary, beyond the bedspread, beyond her family. At times, I too feel I am praying from that place beyond memory, beyond the memory of my mother at the nursing home, beyond the stops and the people on the orange line, beyond the cars speeding on 93 South. It's in my blood and my breath.